So, welcome to this online session about CLIL to Go Part 1. It's basically the online webinar we had on October 20th, 2025 for PHDL. We felt, based on all the questions and comments we got from all over Austria, there is a need to have this presentation for you online and available at any time because it's really a basic information. It's the introduction to CLIL at BHS. So let me share the slide for you. Okay, it's all about hopping on CLIL. Now let's see how we do that. As you can see from the picture here, CLIL stands for Content and Language Integrated Learning. And we wanted to have an image about CLIL that represents CLIL at upper secondary vocational schools and colleges here in Austria. So what you can see here on the top right is this blue cloud with lots of images or graphs that represent our subjects or our school types. What you can see right in the center is CLIL, where you see the teacher sitting on the left, talking to students that maybe even work with computers or sit together and have a nice chat. It's a bit different to a teacher standing in front of a blackboard or a whiteboard or whatever screen and just talking to you, just like I do right now. That is no CLIL session, what I'm doing right now. CLIL is also about student interaction. So what we have at the right is two students interacting, again, maybe online, maybe face-to-face, most definitely with a smartphone in their hands, just as real life would be like. On the left, a very important aspect of CLIL. Here you can see the letter, a scaffold. Scaffolding is a term that is all about one person helping another acquire knowledge, become better at learning whatever there is to learn. And so scaffolding is a central element of CLIL, but we'll come to that later on. So this is for you now an overall image, some sort of introduction, what you're going to hear right now. CLIL, as you just heard, is about content and language, integrated learning. So we use languages, foreign languages, bring them into the ordinary content or subject lessons and enrich it, hopefully. Here in Austria, we try to see CLIL as an innovative approach to learning and teaching. Now, in the international CLIL community, you can discuss that a little bit. There is some sort of a debate on what CLIL really is, but for our purposes, we really would like to see it as a methodology. What do we do in CLIL? So we bring in the foreign language. Mostly it will be English, but not just talking English, just like you have me here now talking to you in English in a foreign language. You might guess, why is she talking English? Well, the thing is, CLIL is all about bringing the foreign language to the classroom, but also switching languages. And this is also something I'm going to do today for you so that you get a feeling, so maybe how CLIL could sound like. But to make it clear one more time, it means bringing also in the language teaching methodology. So not just the person standing at the front speaking English, but also to include the methodology. So we'll come to that later on also. Like I said, CLIL is all about also language switching, code switching. Wenn wir über juristische Inhalte sprechen, über Gesetzestexte, dann macht Englisch oder eine andere Fremdsprache wahnsinnig wenig Sinn. Insofern hier die Info für euch. CLIL in den kommenden BHS-Lehrplänen. Ja, wie soll es denn ausschauen? Gleich mal vorweg. Nichts ist fix. Also es ist noch gar nichts wirklich als Gesetzestext verordnet. Das heißt, was wir hier haben, ist sozusagen ein Vorschlag für die Lehrpläne. So haben wir es weitergeleitet und wir hoffen, dass es auch so umgesetzt wird in den Lehrplänen. Wie gesagt, nichts ist fix, man wird sehen. Prinzipiell ist es allerdings wichtig zu wissen, bei CLIL um was geht's. Ja, wir wollen natürlich die Kompetenzen, das Wissen, die Fertigkeiten des Sachfaches erwerben. wenn wir jetzt beispielsweise Baukonstruktionslehre unterrichten oder Physik. Was allerdings mit CLIL passiert, ist sozusagen ein Add-on von sprachlichen und kommunikativen Kompetenzen. Das Miteinander sprechen, das Miteinander oder sich einander schreiben zum Thema, das ist auch etwas, das durch den CLIL-Unterricht gefördert werden soll. Was allerdings unglaublich wichtig ist, darum auch schon vorher der kleine Exkurs, mein Webinar hier ist eigentlich gar kein CLIL, es ist zwar Englisch, aber nicht CLIL, weil ja die Methodik fehlt. CLIL funktioniert dann sehr gut und ist dann eine Bereicherung, wenn sozusagen diese gesamte methodische und didaktische Vielfalt auch wirklich umgesetzt wird. Das soll auch im Lehrplan drinstehen. Wenn wir an ein Lernziel denken, dann geht es hier gar nicht um Perfektion. Also wir wollen mit CLIL die Fähigkeit der praxisgerechten Sprachanwendung. Ja, natürlich ist das Fremdsprachenkompetenz per se, aber es soll jetzt nicht so sein, dass die CLIL-Lehrenden jetzt praktisch Englisch auch noch unterrichten, sondern nein, sie sollen Englisch ins Fach mit hineinbringen und sozusagen die echte Welt abbilden, die echte, authentische Sprachverwendung. Wir kommen dazu auch noch ein bisschen im Detail. Für die HUM eine kleine zusätzliche Möglichkeit. Wir können hier CLIL auch mit der zweiten lebenden Fremdsprache natürlich beginnen. Wir können Französisch, Spanisch, Italienisch, Slowenisch, Tschechisch, was auch immer möglich ist, ins Klassenzimmer bringen. Ich sage jetzt, for the sake of this webinar, I'll focus on English simply because it's the majority, the mainstream CLIL. What do we want? What does CLIL aim at? Of course, it promotes students' language skills. Well, that is no big surprise, is it? If we do more English in the classroom, students will get better in English. It's pretty clear, pretty obvious. But the second aim is also super important. It's all about anticipating job lives. We live in a globalized world. Austria works in a globalized economy. We're part of it. And if you allow students to get your content also with English as the language vehicle, you will help them get better to work internationally. And yeah, by doing so, of course, hopefully it will foster their employability and also their active citizenship. So Beschäftigungsfähigkeit, aktive Bürgerbeteiligung. That's also one of the aims that CLIL has. Now let's talk about, again, the law a little bit. So starting from 2027, there will be the new curricula in BHS. In which BHS? Well, definitely in HAK and HLT. Wie soll es kommen? Also, hier wieder zurück zu Deutsch, weil wir sprechen über Gesetzestexte. Verpflichtend ab dem 3. Jahrgang, das heißt, wir sprechen dann frühestens ab dem Jahr 2030, im Ausmaß von mindestens 36 oder vielleicht 32 bei verkürzten Schuljahren Wochenstunden. 2030 klingt wahnsinnig weit weg, ist auch tatsächlich so. Experience has shown us that it is important to start slow at schools with the CLIL idea, with implementing CLIL. This is nothing you can do from one year to the next one. You need to find the appropriate teachers. You need to send those teachers on seminars, workshops, do some training. So we need time also to prepare materials. That's nothing that happens overnight. I mean, maybe language teachers remember the time also, all subject teachers, when we had the new standardized exams and when suddenly for oral exams we had to create new tasks. And we know that takes time, and the same is true for CLIL. This is also the number one reason why SEPS is doing all this information overload, so to say, to make sure our teachers can start slow and carefully and to have a good time doing it and not just say, oh, it's a burden and I have to do it in 12 months. Well, what is also on that slide? Typenbildende Fächer bevorzugt. Ja, also es gibt ja Handreichungen für jeden Schultyp. Und da steht das tatsächlich auch in so einem schönen Satz drinnen, also typenbildende Fächer, sprich für meinen Schultyp HLW wäre es zum Beispiel Ernährung, Küche, Service. Ja, richtig, aber wenn ich jetzt an einer Schule bin und da gibt es jetzt beispielsweise den Geschichte-Kollegen oder die Physik-Kollegin, Biologie, die sagt, na, ich war lange in der Wirtschaft, ich war in der Wissenschaft, ich habe international gearbeitet, ich finde Englisch super, ich habe meine Themen, die bieten sich an für Englisch. Ja, bitte, dann wäre das doch großartig, wenn die das genauso machen. Also das ist so ein Ansatz, der mag seine Berechtigung haben. Grundsätzlich sind wir hier aber als so einem Starting Point for CLIL. So we all start out, except for HTL and HLFS, of course, and it should be fun. We should really enjoy doing CLIL. And let's say whoever wants to do it should do it. And yes, of course, if we have the one school where we have cooking, service, nutrition, all sorts of subjects that work together closely and then create the CLIL community at their school, yeah, that's perfect. But whoever wants to do CLIL, let me say that again, should be allowed to do CLIL. Jetzt noch so ein Satz, Webuntis, was bedeutet das? Es gibt dann in Webuntis die Möglichkeit, diesen CLIL-Button zu drücken. Die Frage ist nur, wann? Wann darf ich den drücken? Ist 10 Minuten CLIL okay oder nur 5 Minuten CLIL oder doch 50 Minuten CLIL? Nun ja, also wie gesagt, wir sind in den Kinderschuhen, wir starten mit dem, was möglich ist. Und wenn jemand sagt, boah, ich bin noch so ein bisschen zurückhaltend und irgendwie fühle ich mich noch nicht so ganz sicher, aber ich habe dieses coole Video, ich habe hier eine Aufgabe, die für die Schüler dann klasse ist und die werden dann drüber reden und das wird dann in der Fremdsprache sein. Ja, bitte. Und wenn es nur 10 Minuten waren, dann klickt den CLIL-Button. Was passiert nach diesem Klicken? Wir können anhand dieser Dokumentation dann im Grunde feststellen, oder die Schule, nicht wir, die Schule kann feststellen, ob tatsächlich diese 36 Stunden Minimum abgebildet wurden. Und ja, das ist eben in Erfüllung eines Lehrplanauftrages doch ganz wesentlich. Wenn es um Beurteilung geht, CLIL-Lehrkräfte beurteilen den Content, beurteilen die Inhalte. Wenn ihr Feedback zur Sprache gebt, sehr gerne, aber es soll eben die Note nicht beeinflussen. If you create, for instance, tasks assessment, because you've done, let's say, a session on, what could it be? Let's say Einstein. A session on Einstein, it was all English and you feel it's so logical to also do the test in English then because all the vocabulary was memorized in English, the concepts were explained in English, then of course you're absolutely allowed to do that assessment in English, but you always allow your students to answer in German. Or you also have a second test in your pocket where everything is in German if somebody maybe has a blackout due to language overload or whatever, okay? Now, why on earth do we have to do CLIL? Simply because SEPS people are so enthusiastic about it? No, definitely not. What we know from international research and also from Austrian research, I mean, let's not forget, HTL started in 2011 in their curriculum with the obligatory CLIL. And what we can see there is it is a success model, and we see that internationally. It is a European success model, and for that matter, we know that students are typically rather motivated to do English in their classroom because they know they will need it in their future business life. Now, of course, not every student is motivated in every CLIL lesson every time. So we still teach teenagers. We know our share of problems in the classroom, and sometimes the best lesson will fail simply because something is going on. But in general, we can say CLIL raises motivational levels amongst students. Another reason is what we know from neuroscientific research. We know that our brains are more likely to learn when we combine things that are not typically combined. I mean, when you have maths and you bring it in English suddenly, why on earth would we do that? Well, we know from the neurosciences that something that is straightforward can be remembered. But when you bring in the extra kick, the extra challenge, something new, then brains become like, say, oh, okay, what's going on here? I have to remember that. That's something I would like to learn. I'd like to know more about it. So curiosity is always something that helps our brains to learn. And CLIL creates that kind of environment. Now, another really, really good argument for CLIL is a CLIL teacher brings in authenticity. You can teach our students communication skills in a way that no English teacher can, because you will bring in situations from the real life, from your subject, from, let's say, nutrition again. Yeah, imagine a dietologist and a patient having a real and authentic conversation. That's something an English teacher cannot really do in his or her lessons to that extent. Something else that is extremely interesting, at least for me personally, CLIL offers the opportunity to raise intercultural awareness amongst our learners. Why? Because every content, every subject has its own culture, its own community, their own way of talking. Let's talk about funds managers. They have their own language. They have their own way of interacting, of communicating. Again, something that the language teacher cannot really bring to the classroom to that extent. So, knowing the culture of a subject is something that CLIL teachers can offer, that you can do. Again, another little situation for you. Imagine cooking and service. There's a lot of action going on, and that is some sort of culture. I'm sure you can imagine that is absolutely different from any other subject. Or let's say the Bauhof in HTL. Yeah, so you have a communication pool that is just not possible with the classroom setting in a language teaching class. Okay, something that we have to make clear, because that's very often confused, is CLIL compared to English as medium of instruction. In Deutsch, English as Arbeitssprache. I'm sure you are in a school, or maybe you know schools where you have maybe geography taught in English, or history taught in English, maybe because you have a native speaker who can do that, or you have the language teacher who teaches both the subjects, and it's of course something absolutely nice to have. CLIL is different though. CLIL means that you bring in the extra methodological approach that we know from language teaching. What I'm doing here, may I say it again, is not a CLIL lesson. That is English as a medium of instruction. Yeah, I'm just blah-blahing in English, but there is no really nice, cool methodology behind it. I'm really wanting you to sit down, listen to me, and that's it. Let's have a quick comparison. Maybe that's also important for you to know. What does the CLIL teacher focus on, and what does the teacher of English as a foreign language focus on? Now, you still, even though you come into the classroom, you use English, you focus on your subject. A language teacher will always focus on the language. When we come to our teaching aims, CLIL teachers teach the content with some language, whereas language teachers really teach the language with some content, of course. I mean, there is no language teaching without content, obviously. But then again, maybe sometimes we are wrong when we talk about the typical BHS subjects. Maybe we just overheard things, and then our students are smiling a little bit. The teacher is talking about, I don't know, mechatronics, and she or he gets a bit wrong. But that's okay. Maybe the same happens to you in the CLIL lesson. You teach your subject, but maybe some aspects of English go wrong. Well, let's laugh about it. And that's it. This will happen. This happens even now in the webinar, if I remember correctly. A non-native person who uses a foreign language will inevitably make mistakes. And by the way, when I speak German or my dialect, I'm also making mistakes. This is how language works. This is how language is. It's in the nature. We don't want it to happen, but this is what language teachers are pretty used to. So this feeling of, ich bin fehlerhaft, ich mache da nicht alles korrekt, it's okay, okay? Nothing happens. No one's recording you, are they? Assess and mark content. We talked about that already. Please focus on content only. Language teachers focus on assessing the language. When you give feedback, however, you of course always give feedback on what the students know about your content. If you want to, you can give feedback on the language. Absolutely free to do so. What can SEPS offer at the moment? Now we have a website, it's called seps.at, and as you can see, we have one section that is focusing on CLIL. We try to enlarge the content. We are not too many people who can focus on CLIL, but we give our very best to offer whatever is needed for our future or current CLIL community. Now, absolutely essential is, of course, ideas for your lessons. And when you click on CLIL Unterrichtsbeispiele, what you get there are the Handreichungen. You also find them in CLIL Austria, but also lesson plans. And the lesson plans, allow me please to talk a little bit about them. We have a template. This is here the lesson plan of my dear colleague Felicitas Moll from nutrition. And what you can see here is we always try to fill in this little table, because then you cannot forget what is essential. So a CLIL teacher, it's always ideal if he or she thinks about, okay, what activity types am I going to offer? By doing so, students will remember your content. And that is what we want, don't we? They need to be competent in your subject. Now, classroom format, that's part 2. Make sure that there is not just teacher talk. I'm sure in most of your sessions there isn't anymore, but still, just to have it mentioned. But students are allowed to work individually, but also to work in pairs, to work in groups. Also important for us to always think about when we plan our CLIL sessions is how long should it be? 1 lesson, 2 lessons, or maybe even a whole sequence. Procedure. That is the heart of the template. So we go through, we have a step-by-step approach so that we really focus on how did I differentiate with my methodology, what's going on or what should go on in the classroom. And what you can see here in blue is Bloom's taxonomy. You are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, of course, and in the CLIL session, we should really always want, at least sometimes, to go up really high, where we create something, where we evaluate something. And Bloom's taxonomy helps us in the planning phase to really say, okay, check. Am I still at remembering or understanding, or is there the opportunity to also climb the taxonomical ladder? Now, resources, I think this is mostly for us. For your lessons, I'm sure not so relevant. But when you want to share your materials, and you're very welcome to do so with us, because we want to create a really nice CLIL community, then include the resources also. Now the last 2 boxes. Number 1, content-related learning outcome. Now, of course, it's something you care about. I mean, this is what your Jahresplanung is all about. This is what the curriculum is all about. So what should students know at the end of whatever session, sequence, lesson? However, as we have English as the extra highlight in the CLIL classroom, when you become a more experienced CLIL teacher, you will have more time to do that. And please, this should be your aim. Where is language-related learning outcome? Now, for instance, when you are a teacher of economics, maybe you want to talk about inflation. What will you do? You will include graphs. You will talk about how inflation has risen, how it has reached a plateau, maybe how it's going on at the moment, and so on. So this is interesting for the students to then focus a little bit on that type of language. And for you as the CLIL teacher, to be able to present that will make it easier for them to understand the process, maybe not just of inflation, but also of the language structures that are needed to explain inflation, just as an example. Now, let's go on. Materials are, they are not rare, but there are not too many for us. Now, for all the general subjects, we can recommend One Stop CLIL or One Stop English as a resource website. There are many more, just Google it. But when you Google or ask AI, what happens is you will get international CLIL mostly. And international CLIL is different to Austrian CLIL, CLIL VOC CLIL. Why? Because the teachers are usually native speakers teaching English, and now they do it with a CLIL approach. What we have in Austria are content teachers who are the CLIL teachers. They focus on their content and English is the add-on. So just for you, that you are not too disappointed when you get materials and you're not too happy with them. But we have a little bit of a solution for you, hopefully, at least in the long term. First, training. May I say that in German now? Selbst organisiert jährlich Seminare. Unsere Sprachenlehrkräfte kennen das ganz gut. Für CLIL-Lehrkräfte ist das vermutlich etwas Neueres. Es gibt ein Bundesseminar kommendes Jahr wieder. Das ist geplant. Wir sind noch nicht ganz fix im Bildungskatalog verankert, aber für euch zur Info jetzt schon mal vorweg. 16. bis 17. November, 2 Tage an der PHDL in Linz mit Amanda McLaughlin. Sie ist eine absolute renommierte CLIL Materials Writer. Also wir freuen uns schon sehr darauf, dass wir mit ihr euch CLIL näher bringen dürfen. Jetzt ist es ja so, Materialien haben wir erwähnt, also für die BHS fokussierte Materialien zu finden, ist gar nicht mal so einfach. Drum unser Ziel auch als CEPS für unsere CLIL-VOC-Community so viel als möglich zur Verfügung zu stellen. Das geht aber natürlich als CEPSler gar nicht, weil wir sind ja alle Sprachenlehrkräfte. Was wir brauchen, seid ihr. Sprich, erfahrene CLIL-Lehrkräfte. CLIL-Lehrkräfte sagen, ja, das hat gut funktioniert oder hier hätte ich eine tolle Idee, tauschen wir doch aus. Und das passiert beim Bundesseminar und das passiert aber hoffentlich auch bei diesen Webinars. CLIL for Economics ist unser erstes Webinar, zielgruppenorientiert für die Wirtschaftspädagoginnen und Pädagogen mit dem Kollegen Bernhard Löffler aus Wien. Der macht die Sache richtig gut. Ich weiß, ich war schon zweimal beim Workshop. Darum freue ich mich sehr, dass er uns hier begleitet. Ziel ist immer, wir sollen uns gegenseitig kennenlernen, uns austauschen und diese CLIL-Community starten. Und ich zeige euch noch auf der Website, eine Kleinigkeit haben wir schon für euch aus dem heurigen Bundesseminar. Zweite zielgruppenorientierte Fortbildung, History mit Chris Muller, auch einer dieser ganz großen International CLIL Trainers. Wie gesagt, auch in Deutsch, mache ich Fehler, am 23. November 2026. Also wir hoffen, euch hier mit ein bisschen etwas zu liefern. Und wir werden laufend darauf aufbauen. Wie gesagt, wir haben ein bisschen Vorlaufzeit. Was bieten wir noch an? Wir haben einen Blog, der CLIL VOC Blog. VOC steht übrigens für Vocational, als Berufsbildung. Es ist uns bewusst, Mittelschule, AHS, Unterstufe, Oberstufe haben auch CLIL in den Lehrplänen, aber wir sind als CEPS irgendwie sehr in der BHS verankert und darum verzeiht es uns, wenn wir hierzu einfach nicht so viel Material liefern können, aber wir verweisen gerne auch hiermit auf das ÖSZ. Für die Primarstufe, Sekundarstufe gibt es von denen auch wirklich tolle Materialien. Unser Blog, einfach clilvoc.blog eingeben und alle 2 Wochen circa kommen Fragen aus der CLIL-Community beantwortet. Etwas Neues gibt es als 2 Folgen mit Stand heute, also Anfang Dezember, der CLIL VOC Talk. Kollege Berntaler ist unser CLIL-Experte aus der HTL, der das eben schon seit 2011 durchführt, mitgetragen hat und ich darf ihm Fragen stellen und er beantwortet sie mir höchst professionell auf YouTube oder Spotify. Mal schauen, wo die Reise hingeht. Wir starten jetzt mal los, sozusagen ein Baustein, um die CLIL-Community an österreichischen BHS so zu unterstützen, zu starten, gemeinsam zu arbeiten. Ja, unser Newsletter, das ist mein dritter Aufruf von euch, sich mit uns zu vernetzen. Warum? Der Newsletter, naja, das ist so eine Sache, ihr werdet sehen, wenn ihr draufklickt, das ist ein Forms. Das heißt, wir fragen ab auch die Unterrichtsfächer. Und das ist natürlich schon ein bisschen mit einem Hintergedanken. Wir können dadurch im Grunde dann am Ende des heurigen Schuljahres, ist der Plan, sozusagen dann starten, E-Mails auszuschicken, direkt konkret auf die jeweiligen Kolleginnen und Kollegen der Fächer. Und wenn ihr dann Lust habt, euch untereinander zu unterstützen, zu vernetzen, werden wir versuchen, das zu ermöglichen. Wir freuen uns schon drauf, aber jetzt bitte anmelden, weiterleiten an Kolleginnen und Kollegen, dass das möglichst groß wird. Ja. So, thanks for your attention. As far as the PowerPoint is regarded, there's one little treat that I'd like to show you, but let me prepare it quickly. Here you've got the CLIL button, and when we go here, this is where you find information, general information on CLIL. And we have here the Unterrichtsbeispiele. And this is the latest pool. It's based on the work from your colleagues at the Bundesseminar from this November. And you just click on it, browse through it. They were so kind to share it with you, and I'm very grateful for that. So whenever you have something you'd like to see on such a Padlet, don't hesitate. Here we go. There's a lot we can offer then. Again, CEPS has a little role in the CLIL story, but it's you who's got the bigger role. And yeah, that was it now. Let me stop here. Thanks for listening or watching. There will be a CLIL to Go number 2 coming up as soon as possible.